Alright, there's been tons of discussion in the Destiny community recently around the new grind that players got in Edge of Fate. The smart people are rightly complaining that the grind sucks and is pointless, while the Bungie dick riders and shills are doing what they always do, defending Bungie for every shitty fucking thing that they do. So I've decided to weigh in on the subject with my take. I'll be focusing mostly on Destiny because that's my expertise, but I will also use other games as an example. So I made my video talking about the community's reaction to Bungie disabling Encore because it was rewarding, and I read hundreds and hundreds of comments. But this thread hit the nail on the head. So they say the biggest thing I hate about the portal changes is we have this huge power grind that's abysmal to do, and you can't even do most of the difficulty settings for the portal activities until you reach a certain power. Nobody wants to spend dozens of hours farming random infusion fodder just to be able to play the potentially good parts of the game. 100%. A person that is 7007, you're bang on with this one. And then the other people in the comment sections replying to it are just like this. I came back to the game after years, back during episode Revenant, and have been having a lot of fun off and on since, until I got on after the update and started poking the portal and tried solo ops and immediately realized half of them are just lost sectors that are horribly easy with slight generic objectives like this. And all the portal stuff is the supposed content and fun, but it's literally just a mindless slave grind of old stuff from years ago. Actually insane that people can just eat it up. Feel free to pause and read all the comments because it's a pretty good discussion in my comment section, but this one from GammaJack7 says, and this is why power should be completely disabled across the board. I hate playing boring activities for hours and hours to increase my power level just so I can, quote unquote, unlock the challenging options that I wanted to play all along. That's exactly the point that I'm going to be making in this video, that the grind is just artificial and it's just so that you can unlock the stuff that you actually want to play. So let's jump into it. So here's the thing with Destiny 2. It's a live service game and it's basically a Frankenstein game. It's had so many changes and iterations on it over the years that it's basically unrecognizable today from where it started. Hell, with the Edge of Fate changes, you could argue it's unrecognizable from a week ago. Point is, power level has not mattered for years, and Bungie knows this, and I know this, and much of the community does as well, because Bungie themselves actually went away from it for a time. They actually stopped the light grind from season to season, which was received very well. Personally, I freaking loved it. I've always had a full vault and I used most of my exotics, so every season I would spend tons of currency on hundreds and hundreds of upgrade modules just so that all my exotics would be at max light for when I soloed GMs, and it was super annoying. So when they kept it the same for a year, I was elated. Unfortunately, Bungie management was not. They missed the free player engagement that they would get at the start of each season. People playing Gambit and other activities they had no interest in, but it was just so that they could make their number go up. I hated this grind by the end, and I didn't want to grind pinnacles, but I did it because I felt I was forced to. And I did it as fast as possible so that it would just be done and over with and I could engage with the stuff that I actually enjoyed in the game. So back in Destiny 1, you had the Forever 29 meme. People just one armor piece away from being light level 30, which was max at the time. But D1 was designed around light level. As you completed Vault of Glass, the hardest content in the game, you got higher power gear so that on subsequent runs, you would have an easier time beating that content. Hell, in the day 1 raid for Crota, one team member went and grinded some light level just to be the sword bearer so that he could do more damage to Crota and help the team beat it. This is when light level actually mattered. And D2 was designed around this power level system as well. Hell, even in Forsaken, it mattered greatly. A huge reason only 2 teams beat Last Wish on day 1 is because there was a lot less streamers back then. Only a few hundred players even had a realistic shot at beating the raid day 1 because most didn't have time to spend hours grinding prime engrams on the Dreaming City to be raid ready. But again, the game was designed around this system. Day 1s weren't really made for the average player. They were made as a pinnacle pursuit. Once you were high enough level, you could take on this daunting raid. And when you did, you would be rewarded with strong, high power gear to help you beat it easier on future runs. If memory serves, you couldn't do the 1-floor Riven Cheese with cluster bomb rockets until you were around 580 or 585 light, because otherwise you just wouldn't output enough damage. So now that we have the historical context, let's fast forward to present day Destiny. Over the last few years, Bungie has been making power level less and less relevant, and personally, I think this is great. It helps people be on the same page in all bits of content. You used to be able to overlevel master lost sectors. Well, I liked to make lost sector guides back in Beyond Light when I started YouTube, so it would be hard to do because what worked for me with a build may not work for someone else because I'm only 3 under light and they're 20 under light. Same goes for day 1 raids. They implemented contest mode so now everyone would be on the same playing field. So now there's no streamer advantage like there was with Last Wish, where the people who no-lifed the game had a clear advantage over people who are more under light. Again, this change in direction allowed for more people to partake in day 1 raids, and it allowed parity across the game. In a Grandmaster Nightfall, something that I like to solo and teach people how to beat solo, this was great. Even if I had a higher light level than someone watching one of my videos, I was still always 25 under light, just like anyone watching my video would be. So the build that worked for me should theoretically work for them the same way. Obviously we would have different armor stats and maybe different weapon perks because maybe I have a god roll and they don't, but at least we were dealing pretty much the same damage and taking the same amount of damage from enemies. The point is, in modern day Destiny, basically everything is capped at a certain power. Raids and dungeons are apparently 10 below power now, and I don't know how the whole system works anymore, but the point is, it doesn't matter. I could be 0 power, and Bungie could just make a difficulty system. This is 20 under light, this is 30 under light, this is 40 under light. It puts everyone on the same difficulty rating. That content will always be that difficult, no matter what your power level is. And how do you overcome this power delta? By grinding good gear, getting set bonuses that make you stronger, getting tier 5 weapons that give you more damage. You struggle in the hard content at the start so that you can become more powerful through your gear grind, and then you can clear the content faster. To keep getting stronger rewards to help you beat even harder content. Rinse, repeat. This is how most MMOs are designed. Yes, they have grind, they have power levels, but the game is designed around it, so it makes sense and is for the most part functional. The power level grind in Destiny is completely artificial. All a higher power level does is allow you access to grinding the harder content, rather than allowing everyone access and you have to rely on your skill to beat it. And then you get stronger through your gear. You literally cannot overlevel content in Destiny. The game doesn't allow it because of its power deltas. So therefore, the number is completely meaningless. It's an artificial barrier that players have to overcome just so that they can grind the gear that they actually want, and it's bullshit. How it should be is the -40 content should be available day 1 and the best players will beat it to get tier 5s. The less skilled players will grind -30 content for tier 4s, and once they have enough tier 4s, they can take on the harder -40 content because now their build is more powerful. It's all just such a disconnect from the developers. The community wanted more grind, but they wanted that grind to be meaningful. They wanted to grind god roll tier 5s and perfectly statted armor so that they could make their builds as strong as possible. This is a fun grind. New set bonuses and better weapons, this is what they meant when they said they want to grind back in Destiny, playing hard activities for high quality loot. People hate grinding power because it's completely meaningless. Did you know that in concentration camps in Nazi Germany, a form of torture for the inmates was to have them dig a hole and then just have them fill that hole right after? A completely meaningless task. Humans love to feel rewarded in some way for the work that they do. People take pride in feeling like they accomplished something. No person likes to have their time completely wasted. It's the most precious resource on Earth, and we all have a finite amount. And sadly, Bungie covets that time, and they design their game around getting as much of it as they can. It's shameful. They should instead be focused on making a fun game, not designing their game around how much they can milk as much engagement as possible. And Bungie always does this. Oh, we listened guys, we heard you wanted grind, so we took away crafting and introduced a pointless grind that you get to do every 6 months. We listened, aren't you happy? We're listening. I swear they take the wrong lessons from all the feedback because they are just completely out of touch. That, or they do know the root cause of the issues, but the decision makers simply don't give a shit. And they do what they think is best for engagement rather than what's best for the player base. The developers just heard, more grind? Okay, well you can't grind the stuff that you actually want, which is tier 5s, until you play boring monotonous content for 200 hours first. Yeah, that's fun, right? You said you wanted grind, here you go. The grind that players want is aspirational loot, because when they earn that loot, they feel accomplished, like it was worth grinding for. Remember what I just said about humans having an innate desire to achieve things? There you go. But Bungie just wants to deliver a minimum viable product for maximum returns. So they will never put enough actual content and enough desirable loot in the game to keep players chasing for a long time. So they have to manipulate them instead. My best friend lived with me in 2017 and he was the top player in the world on Diablo for a season on Xbox. He had the highest Greater Rift clear score in the world across all platforms in solo, duos, and quads. I messaged him for this video, and I may get some stuff mixed up because I'm not super fluent in Diablo 3, but it shows how a grind is supposed to work. He had to grind regular rifts for keys to run greater rifts. This is the artificial grind. Doesn't allow him to play the greater rifts, which is what he wants to play, and try to get a good time. He has to farm the regular rifts first to get a key to get into the GRs. But at least it isn't a massive barrier, but it would be nice if he could just grind GRs. But because MMOs are designed to be grindy, this is what you get. But then he would run those GRs and hopefully get a good spawn rotation so that he could beat it. These were very hard and your level absolutely mattered. He also told me Paragon score mattered. This would be the equivalent to power level in Destiny, and Paragon score directly affected your stats and made you stronger. So as you leveled up, you got stronger. Sure, it was minor improvements, but every bit mattered. In D2, your power level has no bearing on gameplay because you are always a certain delta under light. The contest mode raid is 100 light to be on light level, but you'll be minus 20 or whatever they choose. A 300 power player will still be 100 minus 20. It does not matter. In Diablo, if you put the time in, and my friend told me that most PC players would just run bots so they could have way higher Paragon, so they had a clear advantage there. Yes, your gear and skill was more important, but all things being equal, the higher Paragon player would just flat out have an advantage. So even if it was long and monotonous, it still rewarded your grind. Destiny does not reward your grind in any way, not in terms of power level, other than giving you access to be able to farm the gear that you want. A completely pointless barrier that Bungie installed in the game for increased engagement. There's no reason players can't be grinding tier 5 armor from day 1 if they are skilled enough to beat the hardest content. And when you did harder, greater rifts, you got better loot. You got higher gem levels for augmenting gear, so you had a clear benefit to doing the hardest content. He said there was some annoying grind which was doing bounties for a chance of re-rolling gears for primals, and primals were the best gear in the game. It had the max stats that you could get in the game, but it could also have bad rolls, so that was the incentive, to get the primals which had the highest stats, and then hopefully get the ones that are distributed the best for your build. So there was also incentive to doing the hardest content, because then your character could be the best that it could be. Again, Destiny used to have a system sort of similar to this. You could only hit max light by doing the raids back in the day, but then you got stronger and that content became easier and you would get lots of materials and resources and the best gear in the game. But Destiny lost this endgame pursuit a long time ago. Sure, the Vault of Glass weapons are now the best in the game again. Funny how things have come full circle 10 years later, with Hezen Vengeance and Praetus Revenge getting god rolls that no other weapon can get, but soon they will be power crept by something else. We'll just have to wait and see if the future guns come from the hardest content in the game. But again, this is why it's so frustrating. They already have a system in place to reward the hardest content. Want tier 5 weapons and armor? Jump into a minus 50 whatever they're called now with the hardest modifiers in it. The cool thing about the system they have in place is you could theoretically adapt it to all the content in the game. You could do a minus 50 duality for tier 5 weapons from that dungeon, or they refresh the perk pools for all the dungeons and raids in the game. This would give so much replayability, so much grind. You could grind all the dungeons for their tier 5 variant weapons, and then also refresh the loot pools so that each dungeon has armor sets with unique set bonuses. This truly is the way they should have done it, but in typical Bungie fashion, they took a good idea on paper and completely bastardized it, and then ruin it with their design choices to maximize player retention instead of actually making enough unique loot that would keep people playing the game for months. Like legit, you would have so much grinding to do if every single raid and dungeon had unique set bonus armor. But that is not the Bungie we're dealing with. We're dealing with the minimum viable product, never over-deliver Bungie. In truth, this whole armor rework and portal rework should have been in a D3. They should have went dark for 3 years, implement truly unique gear that would have people wanting to chase it. To get back to power level mattering, I played Claire Obscure Expedition 33. I beat Simon around level 85 and I'm so glad I did it then. That boss was a slog and it taught me to learn all his attacks to overcome him. But then because I loved the game, I found a farm and I hit 99 on all my characters. I went back and smoked Simon. It wasn't vastly easier, but it certainly took fewer attacks to beat him. The power difference was definitely noticeable. You could see it with every attack. So again, I was rewarded for grinding. Again, to reiterate, there is no incentive to reach higher power in Destiny because they have set power deltas. The only incentive is artificial, a needless roadblock implemented by the developers strictly for player retention. When I heard and read about this system, I was fearful that this was the plan, and they proved me right. People were getting too high too fast, and they can't have that. Again, it's just a tactic to force them to play stuff that they don't want, when people could be having a blast right now playing the new expansion and chasing rolls on the new gear that they want. The reception to Edge of Fate would be so much different right now if people were farming new stuff out the gate and getting hyped for loot drops again like they did back in D1. But players are getting tier 2s and 3s, knowing that this loot is useless and will be replaced down the road with tier 4s and 5s. But they can't farm that stuff right now because of some arbitrary reason put forth by an out-of-touch Bungie manager. And then even more sickening is, come Renegades, you get wiped and get to do this artificial grind all over again, baby, just so you can earn the right to grind the new gear. Frankly, it's disgusting. Real games that actually care about making a fun game simply make enough content in the game for players to grind for thousands of hours. Look at Path of Exile. There is a near infinite amount of ways to play that game. So you can grind like crazy to perfect a build, smoke all the content, and then you can make a new character and level it up and kit it out, or take your same character and just make a completely different build with it. Same with Outriders. There were tons of different builds you could play per class. This is the way to do it if you want people to play your game. Give them enticing ways to play. Bungie just knows how to keep players addicted, make artificial gameplay loops that make a player feel like they are progressing. And if they are progressing too fast for Bungie's liking, then they will disable the farm or nerf it in some way, just like they did with Encore. Anyways, that's it. Share this video around to the Bungie shills who think that power progression is actual content, because it's not, and I hope this video proved it. And to Bungie, fuck you for treating your players like shit. And to all the bag lickers for this company that like to say, I thought you moved on, stop following the game. Do you know why people who quit still engage with the game on YouTube and the community? Because they feel satisfied and justified in their hatred for Bungie, and it's completely warranted because they're a dogshit studio who doesn't care about making good games anymore. And when they inevitably fail because they put greed before making fun games, all the players who left will happily relish in their downfall, because it was totally justified and deserved. It's their karma. They had a gold mine with Destiny and they mismanaged it and snatched defeat from the jaws of victory on countless occasions. So that is why I'm still around, to point out their predatory practices and to hopefully influence my studio to stop giving their time and money to a company who doesn't deserve it. Anyways, catch you in the next one. Take care.